Okay, let's go.
All right. Hi, all you lovely ladies out there seeking for long-lasting, loving relationships. I'm Paula, and this is Conversations with Paula. And today I want to welcome my dear friend and wellness expert, Shawnte. We are going to follow up on the conversation topic that we started last time about overfunctioning. Today we're going to go more in depth and in detail as to why we overfunction, why we shouldn't do it. And so Shawnte has some very insightful questions for us to delve into this topic further. Thanks, Shawnte.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Paula. So I'll get right into it. Why should I change?
Well, there are a myriad of reasons for changing and a myriad of reasons for not changing. But I think
Hmm.
that we want to start by we are focusing on building relationships with ourselves. And if we're in a relationship right now, to improve the quality of that relationship, or if we're seeking for a loving, long-lasting relationship, to get the relationship of our dreams. And when we overfunction, we create damage in relationships and damage for
Mm,
ourselves. That damage can be physical from being exhausted, emotional, and spiritual as well. Now, when we overfunction in relationships, oftentimes we can end up feeling frustrated, and even more strong feelings beyond frustration, like resentment gets to build up. And we
yeah.
know that that does not lead to anything good or healthy. But before we go into the whys of changing, um, it's important to, and it is very difficult. First, it's important to acknowledge that change can be very, very scary, because
Yeah.
we do things in ways that have served us, even though we may not like the result, but we've learned certain patterns throughout our
Right.
lives, patterns for
Hmm.
coping with anxiety, stressors, coping with our
Hmm.
environment. So I don't want anyone to feel that this is a blame game.
Right.
Oh, I don't
That's
want anyone to
important.
punish themselves mentally, emotionally. It
Hmm.
is very, very, sometimes it can be very difficult to change. But if
Hmm.
you're doing things in a certain way,
Hmm.
and they're not working out for you, we have to find better ways, new ways, get tools. And that's what we're here for. We're building a community in which we're going to all help each other, because
Yeah.
sometimes I struggle with it. I am a recovering overfunctioner. Oh my gosh.
That
That is
is
me to a T. But I once, after my first marriage ended, I did a lot
me.
of soul searching,
Hmm.
and I saw in myself that tendency to overfunction, and I saw how that um, in many ways hurt my relationships, and even with friends as well. I'm not just
Right.
not only love relationships, but
Hmm.
so um why we want to change is because we want to create the life that we desire, the life that we dream of. We want a relationship, if we're seeking for a long lasting loving relationship, in which our needs are met, our partner needs are met as well. Those are
Gotcha.
changes that we have to make. Otherwise, we're going to keep being in the same type of relationship. You find a different guy, it's the same guy with a different suit, because we are not
Right.
making the change.
Right. And that's important that you actually just laid that out because that was going to go into my next question, which I'm sure, other women may have, which is like, what is going to be the payoff for me? Like, you know, when I overfunction, like, what's the payoff? Like, so if I'm getting a positive payoff, why would I, want to change? Like, why would I want to change from over functioning? And I think you just laid out a really, really, good, at least opening case for why the change is important. But could you go into maybe a little more of like, maybe there's another type of payoff people are getting? Like when they over function, they must be getting something out of it when you over function.
Definitely. That is very true. And we're going to go over maybe a couple of the payoffs, the more
Hmm.
obvious ones, and then there are some that are more insidious and underneath and harder to spot.
Okay.
And one of them is that when we overfunction,
Hmm.
we are looking at what the other person is doing. We are other focused, what they're doing or what they are not doing. And we're not looking at ourselves. So that's one. And
Hmm.
that is really tough. And again,
Yeah.
I know this can sound really punitive, but that is not at all the intent. We just want to
Hmm.
be the best version of ourselves that we can
Right.
possibly be.
Yeah.
And so if I'm so focused on what my spouse, my significant other, or my children or my friends are doing or not doing, then I'm not taking the time to soul search and make those
Hmm.
changes for me. Um, you know, because some of us have lived a lifetime in which we have a taskmaster inside that lives there, and it's, yes, you know what I'm talking about. So when we're looking at someone
Yes.
else, then we get to turn off that
Yes.
taskmaster for a
Hmm.
little while instead
Hmm.
of sending it
Hmm.
on a trip to Hawaii mentally or something, you know.
Absolutely.
So that would be
Uh,
one. And then the
okay.
other one is that maybe for some of us, when we overfunction, we get a sense of self-esteem, which is not a
Mm-hmm.
true sense of self-esteem, but it's like, ooh, look at what I'm doing. I solve everybody's
Mm.
problems. I'm the one to go to for this or for that. Or
Yeah.
look at so and so. I have to, if my son, if I don't, even though my son is a grown up, if I don't make him all his meals, he's never gonna get to eat. So here I am saving my son so that he can have, his meals or whatever it may be. So then we see ourselves maybe as a savior, and
Mm-hmm.
get our self-esteem in that way. So those are kind
Yeah.
of tricky. And
Yeah.
but I really believe that these are behaviors that can be tweaked. And with
Gotcha.
friends, like if you have a mastermind group for relationships, for instance, instead of
Mm.
spending the time talking about, oh, my husband did this or my boyfriend did that, how about
Mm-hmm.
spend some time talking about, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, what steps can I take to take
Ah.
me there, what can I
Right.
do so that my relationship can be better? Because
Mm-hmm.
um, there are many relationships that end that with some help they could continue and just
Yeah.
get better. There are some that it's unavoidable, and sometimes you just have to say goodbye and you
Right.
start over, or whatever choices you want to make. But I think a lot of times is that we don't have the tools. No one has taught us. We go to school and we learn 2 + 2 is 4. We learn to read and all of that, but
Yes.
if our parents didn't have the tools, or the people that we surround ourselves with growing up didn't have the tools, how are we going to get them? Okay, yes, when you get older, you can learn, you can read, you can do self-improvement, you can
Mm-hmm.
do, as I just mentioned, and maybe that's something we can think about, a mastermind group for
Right.
relationships.
Yeah. Seriously, I'd be the first to join.
Yeah, yeah. So where we can encourage, the whole idea of conversations with Paula is that we encourage each other, not punish ourselves, or point the
Right.
finger, but if we grow and get better and heal, then that will reflect in the relationships that come into our lives. Because oftentimes, and this is another
Yeah.
point related to that, is that the relationships that come into our lives, or people that come into our lives, oftentimes they're mirrors of parts of
Mhm.
ourselves.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
always, but
Right.
often. Parts that we're
Right.
not looking at, that we're, that shadow self.
Right.
And we really want to take that as an opportunity to learn, to grow. What is
Yes.
this situation? What is this opportunity bringing to
Mhm.
me when I
Right.
meet with someone that things just, what am I
Right.
supposed to learn from this?
Right. I absolutely, I see that as, I call those my teachable moments, like that
Yes.
it's here to serve in some way for me to grow in a certain area. So I 100% can relate to that. Which takes me into my next question then for you, which is what am I avoiding when I overfunction? Because you called off at least one of the things that I know is an issue when you said the savior thing. I would not have even thought about that. So I think that maybe some of those over functioning payoffs, maybe we're hiding from something. So, like, what are we avoiding when we overfunction? Or maybe some traditional things that we may be avoiding.
Yes, and you hit the nail on the head when you said that maybe we're avoiding something, and the main thing that we're avoiding, and this is human nature, is
Mm-hmm.
pain. Because much of what we do all the time is um, trying to avoid pain. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sometimes what we work because we don't want the pain of not having an income and all the things that go with that. Yes, there's the pleasure if you have a job that you enjoy and all of those things. But if we
Mm-hmm.
really, really think about it, how much of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis are things to help to keep us from feeling pain? And oftentimes, change is painful. And when we're avoiding, when we're over functioning, then maybe at the time we're not feeling the anxiety or we're not
Mm-hmm.
feeling the depression. We're not
Mm-hmm.
feeling all those emotions that we often shy away from. But
Right.
every emotion that we can think of as negative, they're not really negative. They're just part of life. And, they have two sides. There's two
Mm-hmm.
sides to everything. And so
Mm-hmm.
uh, over functioning, as I said, is it's really a coping mechanism like many others.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we use those types of coping mechanisms, it's like we're putting a lid
Mm-hmm.
on a pressure cooker of emotions, and they're just all
Yeah.
bubbling and simmering, and they're all there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going away. We're just keeping them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I for a long time I struggled with that, the whole over functioning behaviors, and I did
Mm-hmm.
see a pattern with myself that when
Mm-hmm.
there's stress, then I tend to overfunction, and then when we
Mm.
overfunction we can become overcritical, of
Right.
the people around us. And
Yes.
so that goes back to your original question, why should I stop? Because
Right.
we don't want to be that way. you
Right.
know it's
Right.
just it's working in one way because it's how we know how to cope with those painful,
Mm-hmm.
scary feelings. But if we just take a moment,
Mm-hmm.
whenever we're able to just be with those feelings, we will soon learn to just be with them. They are oftentimes, the fear of feeling the pain is much worse than the actual pain that we're gonna feel. My oldest, my son, recently went through a breakup, and
Mm-hmm.
after a 5-year long-term relationship, which they were
Mm-hmm.
thinking about getting married and all of that, but then they realized that there were some things that they wanted that just were not compatible, and rather than, even though they loved each other, rather than staying together, they decided that the mature and responsible thing would be to go their separate ways, which I was like, wow, really proud of both of them
Right.
for making that
Right.
decision, because a lot of people don't do that. They're so,
Right.
we're so scared of being alone that, we
Mm-hmm.
stay. But anyway, where I was going with this is that he, for a couple of days, was in a really, really angry mood. And then, he called me and we talked about it and talked through it, which I feel really blessed that he called me and, and wanted to
Aw.
share. But that anger was just holding down all the sadness and the pain that he was feeling. And,
Mm.
once he got through it, he began to get through to the other side. You gotta swim in that dark, deep lake of sadness sometimes, and then you get through the other
Hmm.
side and you're okay, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think for sure too with men, maybe because also like that's probably society will allow them to show or express anger, but not the other, spectrums of
Yes.
emotion. So that's so great that he had a mom like you that he could call.
Well,
That's
thank you.
good.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you brought that up. I think,
Yes.
and not only that, I think a lot of people I know for me that just like rung true. I was like, yeah, pain, anger, those are the things that I would rather, go to deal with that, instead
Mhm.
of realizing that, hey, this will help me get to my best life. Not that I have to punish myself, just like you said, but it's going to help me to really, walk into the highest and best expression of life that I can, walk in. So it's freeing. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yes.
All right. So my next question is, what are some tools like I can use to help like me to reduce the over functioning? What are some like practical steps that I can take to help me with this?
Okay. I'm gonna give you a couple to put in your toolbox that are very practical, and then, but first, I want to talk about meditation. I think
Mm,
meditating is very important. Generally, I try to start my day with meditations. You would think I would have
that's okay.
put it on airplane
That's
mode.
okay.
One of the first sins of
Happens to the best of
omissions.
us.
It is
Right. You're a mom too. So that, listen, we all understand.
yes,
We've
yes.
been there.
But meditation is really very a wonderful tool for getting to
Hmm.
know yourself, spending time with yourself, and learning to sit with your emotions. I find
Mm-hmm.
it very, very helpful. For
Mm-hmm.
quite some time, I have been doing yoga, and
Hmm.
lately I've gotten into Kundalini yoga for
Oh.
meditation. And for people who are wanting to reduce the physical symptoms that they're experiencing because of um, anger held within, is a very, very helpful tool. I think maybe
Hmm.
maybe we could put a link or something. I'm gonna send you
Yeah.
a link of one of the meditations that I do. um, I'm
Okay.
not the
I'd like
one
that.
leading it. It's someone else's. I leave that to the experts who know more than I. And then physically, when you're feeling that need to say something that it's really not within your sphere,
Hmm.
what am I trying to say? Your inside your home, your fence, that it belongs to
Gotcha.
you.
Your little house.
Keeping the log in your eye instead of the speck in someone else's eye.
Yeah.
All of that
Yeah.
is just going to a room.
Hmm.
Separate yourself
Hmm.
from the situation, acknowledge what you're feeling at the moment,
Hmm.
take a
Hmm.
deep breath and let it go.
Yeah.
Just
I'm a big
let it
believer.
go. it's
Deep
it's it's that
breathing.
thing. Sometimes we're just so all these feelings are so overwhelming
Yeah.
and we don't know what we're feeling. But if we can identify the feeling, I feel
Hmm.
angry, I feel sad,
Yeah.
or I feel
Yeah.
just yucky, whatever.
Right.
You can identify it. That's a big step forward, because sometimes we don't
Hmm.
even know what we're feeling. And
Right.
there's just so many things happening and it's so overwhelming. And you know um,
Yeah.
just go and just let it be. Let yourself feel whatever it is that you're feeling, and that can be really, really scary. but the
Mhm.
more that you do it, the
Mhm.
better that you're going to get at doing it. One of the things that
Mhm.
I like to do is all around my desk, I have things like that. I'm very tactile person. So
Mhm.
when I'm feeling something, I'll grab, like one of my daughters gave me this little glass heart, and like I look at it. If you're overwhelmed, the brain cannot focus on two things at the same time. Truly, it cannot focus
Right.
truly. So
Right.
if you're just feeling like super overwhelmed and it's the wrong time, the wrong place,
Mhm.
find something to look at, focus on
Mhm.
it, and then you're going to start to relax, and then that gives you a moment, because sometimes all we need is just a moment
Yep.
before the explosion happens. So you
Mhm.
need a moment and just focus on the one thing, and then the next step is to see, okay, what am I feeling right now, you know
Mhm.
what am I feeling at the moment, and
Yeah.
that gives you just enough room to do that, to get a hold of yourself.
I
Yes.
love that. That's like a totem. So it's something like in the health industry, we talk about being able to channel like your attention, which will also give you a release of hormones and the feel good hormones. If it's a totem that's going to remind you of something like, positive or peaceful or whatever that emotional attachment is to that item. Yeah, we call it a totem. That's so great to know
Yes.
that I could use that as a tool. So
Yes. Yes.
meditation, yoga. I love the deep breathing that you said. There's also some health benefits to that too. But it does give you that moment, you know, just a quick second in the totem. I like that. That's something I can
Yeah.
definitely use.
And
So,
something that I want to add, and this is maybe an idea for next time that we get
yes.
together, because you being the wellness expert, is
Hmm.
that when we overfunction, we are also, let's say this is a man-woman relationship, okay?
Hmm.
Um, when we overfunction, we sometimes take away the opportunity from the other person to step up. And
Yeah.
then we're always leaning forward.
Mm.
And what happens when you're leaning forward in someone's face?
Oof.
The other
Yeah.
person goes like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so, and then they get used to it and they just go further and further and further away.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you want closeness,
Right.
right? But if we're over functioning, we're really
Yeah.
pushing the other person in the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that
Oh, that's big.
when we take away that opportunity from the other
Hmm.
person, I would love to in the future talk about how when a person does good deeds, or when we let a man carry the grocery bags or open the door
Hmm.
or give you the seat, how that is a health benefit to that
Yeah.
person. And if it's a man that you love and you have an interest for, and you want what's best for them, you, allowing them to do that, and it turns on all those endorphins, the good
Hmm.
feelings in the brain
Hmm.
when you're doing good deeds, so then it keeps them healthy. So think
Absolutely.
about that too,
Yeah.
when we lean back and give the other person the opportunity to move forward, we're also contributing to their physical
Right.
health. And I'd love to
Mhm.
in the future at some point, if you're willing and available, to go
Mhm.
into talking about the physical aspects
Mhm.
of leaning back and letting the other person do the good deeds and move forward, and how that
Absolutely.
benefits their health.
That's right. It absolutely affects our health. So I just want you to repeat that one more time. What you just said about we want closeness, not leaning like basically it's like you're moving past the meeting point. You're going
Yes.
now over into that person's
Yes.
space, forcing them.
Think about when you are, well, before the social distancing, but when you're at a party or in a work conference, and someone is talking to you, and they're getting a little too close, they're talking to you, and then you move back, but then the
Mhm.
more you move back, the more they move forward.
Right.
And so it's the same thing with a relationship with
Mm.
your significant other. If you're always doing the pursuit, doing the pursuing, and you're always initiating the phone calls and setting up the dates and doing that, then there's nothing
Mhm.
for the other person to do. And as a
Right.
matter of fact, that reminds me of a dear
Wow.
friend that we've been working on this, because she, after a very, very long marriage, she went into a, this is my little dog. She,
Oh, we love doggies. Yes. We have
she's
a
a
weather cat
rescue,
that's gone
little
viral.
Peanut.
So, oh, hi, Peanut. He's
Yes,
so cute.
she's really good. We got
Okay.
her from,
Oh, the girl.
yeah, yeah. See,
What a
bye,
cutie.
Peanut, go take a nap. Go up. Anyway, so we worked on this for a while. As I was saying, she was in a very long marriage, and then the marriage ended, and then she went into a new relationship. And when you've created patterns for a very long time, it's difficult to start new patterns, new ways of being, but
Mhm.
you're with another person, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so she was calling her boyfriend all the time on the every day, and she would get upset because he didn't call her. And I said to
Right.
she we were talking about this, and I said, well, Michelle, if you're always calling him, you're not giving him any room, or you're not
Yeah.
allowing him to miss you or anything like that. You're pushing forward, you're putting the forward moving energy. And this may sound really old fashioned, but I've experienced this myself. I To me, what works, unless you want to be with a man that has more of a feminine energy,
Mhm.
if you want a masculine man, you cannot be the one pushing the relationship forward.
Right.
You have to make that room. You can be the one that says, okay, this is where I want to go. This is the relationship that I want. But then
Right.
you let them put the effort. So she
Right.
stopped calling. And then he started calling. And it
Mhm.
was surprising to her. But when he would call, she would be a little bit annoyed that he didn't call when she was expecting, or it wasn't
Oh no.
enough. So it's like, Michelle, no, 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 no. And
Yeah.
she said, well, what do I do? And I said, well, all you have to do is say, it feels good to hear you.
Right.
And he's going to
Yeah.
feel, that's going to trigger in his brain, and it's going to be like, boom. And it's like,
Yeah.
because men want to please us. They really, really do. I
Yeah.
mean, good
Yeah.
men. I'm not,
Yeah.
there's, there
Right.
are men and then there are men. So they want to please. And then I say, all you have to do is say, it feels good to hear your voice, or it
Right.
feels good to hear from you. That's it. Don't go into the, why didn't you call me yesterday? Or why didn't, no, that's it. Just leave it at that. And then when there's silence in the conversation, let the silence stay. And I know we're going completely off in
No, but
another
these are
direction,
good practical steps because
but
you're
yes,
actually illustrating how like over functioning shows up in a relationship, and I think that was good that we got a life
yes.
example of how that shows up.
Peanut,
I never thought of that.
yes,
So that's see, Peanut is agreeing.
she
That's a
does. She
really
does.
good,
She
it's a
wants
really
to go
good
look at,
point.
she wants to go chase
Hey,
birds.
and if you think like we can all relate in the sense of when we were in school and our teachers and in grade school, like kindergarten and first grade, and they would give you those stickers, or it was just something like you wanted to do more, you wanted to please the teacher, you wanted to do more of that thing that got you like the sticker, and that simple word of affirmation, it's kind of like getting that gold sticker. Like we want to do a little more of that to get that type of response from a person. That could work both ways, but especially with men, especially masculine men. I'm so glad
Yes,
that you said that.
that is a
Yeah.
fantastic analogy. I never heard it like that before. I love it. That's perfect. It is.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing is, okay, if you feel yourself, if your energy, use your masculine energy for the woman I'm talking about, for your
Hmm.
job, your hobbies, for
Right.
raising your children, for all that stuff that needs to move forward,
Right.
not for the relationship, because you cannot have two
Right.
masculine energies in a
Right.
relationship. It's
Right.
just not. And I personally, I don't feel attracted to men that have that feminine energy where I end up having to do it all.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I do have that tendency to overfunction. So that's something that I have to gauge within
Hmm.
myself, and
Yeah.
keep track
Right.
of it and make sure that I'm mindful that if I'm
Mhm.
feeling over anxious, that I take more time either to meditate or to go for a walk or, whatever it is to bring down my anxiety level so
Mhm.
that I keep those kinds of behaviors, which little by little they erode relationships.
Right.
They pick at the base of the
Mhm.
relationship, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, that's what it's about. It's about the relationship, because
Right.
the relationship is it's a living being. It's an
Right.
organism. It's
Mhm.
you, your significant other, and the relationship. And
Right.
all things come together. So physically, if you're feeling that need, just physically take a step back, or physically
Mhm.
put your hand over your
Cover
mouth,
your mouth.
or you know lightly put your tongue between your teeth so that you don't do it. Like whatever works for you, but do something
Mhm.
physical. Later, it's just going to be like you imagine yourself doing it. And like we're talking about the totem, okay, it's the same
Mhm.
thing. I can imagine that little heart and feeling it. And it's like I'm actually feeling it. Same thing.
Right.
Same thing. So
Yeah.
just put one foot behind the other. You're moving back. And you'll see that little by little, the man will begin to move forward. And I
Mhm.
think that that's a very pleasing way to live. It's a harmonious way to live.
Right. Right. It's allowing him to show up in that way for you.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. I love
absolutely.
that. I love that. Well, that's it for me and all the questions that I had this time. I'm looking forward to our next conversation. This is
Thanks,
so great.
Shantae. Awesome questions.
Thank you for allowing me to, have this conversation with
And
you.
if people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
We're on Facebook, pretty much all social media. We are 20 Minute Love, 20MINLUV, or our blog is www.missw.org. So either 20 Minute Love on social media or our direct site is www.missw.org.
Super. Excellent. Thank you,
Yay.
Shantae. Take care.
Thanks, you
And bye,
too.
ladies. Be the hero of your
Bye.
own story. Take care.
All right.